You've met them. Maybe you didn't even realize it. Not the monster hiding in the shadows. Not the villain with a knife and a cold stare. The real danger is far more subtle and far more terrifying. They're the ones sitting across from you, smiling, calm, confident, disarming. They look into your eyes and listen, not to understand you, but to read you, to learn where your boundaries are, so they can quietly, precisely dismantle them. They won't yell. They won't rage. Instead, they chip away at your clarity, your peace, your confidence, until you no longer trust your own instincts. And when they're done, they walk away unbothered, untouched, as if nothing ever happened. The Stoics warned us long ago, don't judge people by their words. Judge them by their repeated actions. Because true character reveals itself not in promises, but in patterns. In this video, we're not going to feed fear. We're going to sharpen awareness. You'll learn to spot 5 signs you might be dealing with a psychopath, not through drama, but through quiet observation. Because once you see clearly, you can no longer be controlled. Let's start with the first and most seductive sign. 1. Charm that feels too perfect, too fast, too soon. From the moment they enter your life, it's like lightning in a bottle. They listen like no one else ever has. They remember the tiniest details, your favorite song, your childhood fear, that one moment you shared in passing. They make you laugh effortlessly. They flatter you at exactly the right time. It feels like you've known them for years, even though it's only been days. But real connection isn't instant. It grows slowly. It's messy. It takes time and trust. What you're feeling here, it's not connection. It's calculation. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The mind adapts and converts to its own purposes the obstacle to our acting." And to a psychopath, your trust is that obstacle. Their charm? That's the tool they use to dismantle it. They don't connect with you. They mirror you. They mimic your passions, your values, even your emotional rhythms. They create a version of themselves that's perfectly tailored to who you are, so perfectly, in fact, that it starts to feel unreal. Because it is. If every conversation feels scripted, if their compliments feel more like performance than presence, if the attention they give you feels like a spotlight instead of a warm fire, take a step back. Observe. Don't get swept away. The Stoics teach us to examine not just others, but ourselves. So ask, am I genuinely drawn to this person? Or are they expertly pulling me in? That's what they do. They don't build closeness, they accelerate it. In a matter of days, you're their best friend, their soulmate, the only one who's ever understood them. They tell you stories of tragedy and hardship, painting themselves as the broken hero. And while their pain might sound raw and emotional, something feels off. Too dramatic, too polished, too cinematic. That's your first red flag. You're not listening to someone's truth. You're watching a carefully produced show. As Seneca warned, time reveals the truth, and that's exactly what a psychopath can't afford. They don't want time, because with time, you'd see the cracks, the inconsistencies, the way their stories change depending on who's listening. So they rush the process. They smother you with attention, praise, and affection. They make you feel like you're in a dream until your guard is down. And you hand them your trust like a gift. But trust isn't a gift. It's something that must be earned, not taken. Epictetus once said, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them." And a psychopath? They tamper with your thoughts. They don't just influence how you see them. They reshape how you see yourself, others, and even your past. It may feel like you're awakening to a new love, a new life, but in truth, you're being put to sleep, gently lulled by flattery and illusion. Pay attention to subtle clues. Notice if someone is becoming too personal, too quickly. If their connection feels tailored, it probably is. And that leads us to the second sign, where things become even more unsettling. As we saw in the first sign, their charm isn't spontaneous, it's scripted. And once they've pulled you in, the manipulation begins to deepen in subtle, unsettling ways. 2. When attention becomes too personal. Have you ever noticed someone praising oddly specific things about you? Not just, "you're kind," but things like, "I love the way you tilt your head when you laugh." Or, "2 weeks ago, you said something so profound, I remember your exact words." It feels special, doesn't it? It feels like they see you, deeply, uniquely. It almost feels like love. But more often than not, it's something else entirely. It's a manipulation tactic known as love bombing, when someone overwhelms you with compliments, attention, and praise to get you emotionally hooked. Fast. It creates the illusion of deep connection. But what it's really doing is lowering your defenses. Real charm isn't planned. It happens naturally, born out of honesty and shared values. Planned charm, on the other hand, is rehearsed. It's a performance refined over time. Psychopaths read people like scripts. They know which answers earn admiration, which jokes earn laughter, which stories earn sympathy, and most importantly, they know exactly what you need to hear. But they don't offer those things because they care. They offer them as bait because it gives them power. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The things you think about determine the quality of your mind." So when someone begins to invade your mind with intoxicating energy, ask yourself, is this joy or intoxication? Because those two things are not the same. One sets you free, the other puts you in chains. 3. They don't respect boundaries, they just disguise it well. Here's something else to pay close attention to. How do they respond when you try to set a boundary? Do they respect your pace, your space, your hesitation, or do they keep pushing things forward with relentless excitement, insisting that what you're feeling is meant to be? A psychopath doesn't see hesitation as a red light. They see it as a challenge, and they'll double down on the charm, the vulnerability, the emotional bonding, whatever it takes to win you over. What feels like deep commitment might actually be conquest. And when you finally say no or try to pull back, watch closely. Do they listen and respect it? Or do they laugh it off, flirt their way around it, or guilt you into changing your mind? 4. Subtle isolation disguised as connection. There's another, deeper layer to the manipulation: isolation. Their attention begins to act like a shield between you and the rest of the world. Your friends start to seem less important. Their flaws don't seem that bad anymore. They slowly start filling every emotional gap in your life, every moment of silence, every empty space. It's like your mind is being reprogrammed to orbit around them. At first, it feels like a fairy tale, like you've finally found the person who completes you. But soon enough, the story changes. Once they sense they have control, the warmth begins to fade. They begin to test your loyalty. They might say something rude, dismissive, or hurtful, and then act like you overreacted when you express how it made you feel. That's how control begins, not with dominance, but with subtle rewrites of your emotional reality. 5. When charm becomes manipulation. The Stoics reminded us, You must live for others if you want to live for yourself. But a psychopath doesn't care about others. They give, only to get. So if you're unsure what to do, here's your test. Say no. Set a boundary. Watch how they react. A truly charming person will respect your space and your freedom. But a manufactured charmer? They'll get upset. They'll make you feel guilty. Or worse, they'll withdraw their affection altogether. Why? Because your freedom threatens their control. The Stoics believed that reason is the highest virtue. Not emotion, not feelings, not blindly trusting charisma or chemistry, but clarity, logic, awareness. So if someone is constantly around you and makes you feel off, if their praise makes you crave their approval more than you're comfortable with, the previous signs reminded us. When praise becomes addictive and attention starts to feel like a drug, our reasoning is already under siege. And that's the moment when clarity becomes your greatest protection. 6. When your mind is being rewritten, slowly, quietly, and dangerously. The best way to defend yourself from manipulative charm isn't to shut yourself off from the world. It's to stay aware. To pause. Step back from your emotions and ask the hard questions. Does this feel real? Or does it feel practiced? Is this person helping me grow or reshaping me to better suit their needs? Stoicism doesn't tell us to be paranoid. It teaches us to see clearly. Because clarity is your shield, your filter, your freedom. So, when someone enters your life with overwhelming charm, immediate intimacy, and love that reads like a fantasy novel, stop, watch, wait. Trust isn't supposed to be instant. And truth always reveals itself, but only to those with the patience and the presence to wait long enough to see it. Sign number 2. A hollow space where empathy should be. One of the most telling signs of someone's true character isn't how they treat you when they want something. It's how they treat others when there's absolutely nothing to gain. Pay close attention. How do they respond to someone else's pain? Do they lean in with real concern, their eyes softening with empathy? Or do you catch a flicker of irritation, just for a second, before the friendly mask snaps back into place? Psychopaths often lack what the Stoic philosopher Seneca called humanitas, that deep, shared emotional understanding that binds people together. They simulate empathy, but only at the surface level. Their words of comfort sound scripted. Their compassion fades the moment your pain no longer serves their agenda. Seneca once said, "Wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness." But to a psychopath, people aren't humans. They're opportunities. That's the difference. And it's chilling. If their reactions feel strangely empty, if their comfort feels robotic or just a little too perfect, you may be looking into the eyes of someone who knows what emotions are, but doesn't actually feel them. Empathy is the glue of humanity. It's what makes someone stop to help a stranger. It's what makes one person cry when another is hurting. It's what fills silence not with words, but with comforting presence. But a psychopath? They don't have that glue. They only mimic it, and they're good at it. So good that you might not notice at first. They've studied the signs, when to hug, when to nod, what to say when someone's in pain. They can read the moment perfectly, but they're acting in a play they don't believe in. Their sympathy is not felt. It's performed. Epictetus once wrote, "The wise resist pleasures, the foolish become slaves to them." So what greater pleasure for a psychopath than having power, without guilt, without emotional restraint? They see empathy as a weakness, as an unnecessary burden. They lie and manipulate without the emotional brakes that stop the rest of us. You'll notice it in the smallest things. When someone tells them about a death or a loss, they say, "I'm sorry," but there's a pause, as if they're flipping through a mental script. And their eyes? They don't soften. They don't linger. They dart. They calculate. They're not with the other person. They're just managing the moment. Now here's where it becomes even more revealing. A person with real empathy will follow up. They'll check in again. They won't forget your pain after one conversation. But a psychopath? The moment has passed, and so has their concern. They never truly felt your anguish. To them, it was just numbers. Marcus Aurelius once advised, "Don't waste the rest of your time here worrying about other people, unless it contributes to the common good." That idea isn't about being cold or uncaring. It's about acting with reason, not blind emotion. And the Stoics? They were never heartless. They just believed in seeing things as they truly are. Now, let's dive deeper into the chilling moment when that mask begins to crack. Sign number 3. Coldness disguised as care. The Stoics weren't emotionless. They didn't teach us to suppress compassion, but to make it useful, rooted in reason, not driven by chaos. But for a psychopath, even the act of pretending to care is just another move in their game, a tactic to disarm, to seem normal, to uphold the illusion of decency while lacking its essence. This is when things begin to take a darker turn. Their lack of empathy isn't obvious at first. In fact, it often shows up looking like deep interest. In the beginning, they may seem fully present, attentive to your stories, your pain, your past, but over time, you start noticing a pattern. Your emotions feel one-sided. You bleed, and they watch. You cry, and they either ignore you or file it away to use as ammunition later. They might say, "You're too emotional," or "Why are you always so sensitive?" as if your humanity inconveniences them. And truthfully, it does. They don't live where your feelings live. They only speak the language, but they never really feel it. Seneca once spoke of sympathia, the deep belief that all human beings are inherently connected. He believed recognizing that bond is what helps us grow into better people. But a psychopath moves in the opposite direction. They isolate, they disconnect, they weaponize emotional distance to hurt others. Because when they don't feel, they're in full control, and for them, control without accountability is the ultimate reward. You may begin to feel as if you're no longer seen as a person, but studied like a subject, like your reactions are being cataloged, like your vulnerabilities are stored away, not to protect you, but to be accessed later, when they need to manipulate you most. That hollowness you feel, it's not in your head. It's your intuition whispering, something's missing. Something that should be there isn't. One of the most disturbing traits is how calm they remain when someone else is suffering. In a group, they won't flinch during tragedy. They might crack a joke. They may roll their eyes at things others hold sacred. To them, mourning is theater. Sadness is weakness. Feelings? Tools to be used, not honored. Epictetus once said, "Men are not disturbed by things, but by the view they take of them." And for a psychopath, other people's pain isn't disturbing, it's just background noise. And if your sorrow doesn't serve their goal, they mute it entirely. But here's your power, awareness. You don't have to stay in a relationship with someone who can't understand what you feel. You're not a tool. You're not a well of emotional supply. You are a human being. If your emotions are constantly met with cold detachment, if your pain is received with indifference, walk away. No drama, no rage, no explanation. just a quiet return to your own peace. The Stoics taught us to live in the present, to see things as they are, not as we hope they'll be. So when someone shows you, again and again, that they don't care about others, believe them. Your trust is your shield. Your silence is your boundary. When a psychopath is near, your emotions aren't safe, but your clarity, your ability to see truthfully and think clearly, still is. And once you step into that clarity, their emptiness can't reach you anymore. Stay grounded, stay awake, and never apologize for feeling deeply, even in a world that often only values the illusion of feeling. Previously, we explored how the lack of empathy reveals itself over time. Now, let's dive into another telling sign, one that hides behind impressive words: pathological storytelling. Sign number 3. Pathological storytelling. Lies that sound like legends. At first, their life sounds nothing short of extraordinary. They've overcome immense challenges. They've traveled across continents. They've met fascinating people and lived a life that seems pulled from the pages of a best-selling novel. But give it time, and the cracks begin to show. One day, they tell you they grew up in poverty. The next, they claim to come from privilege. Timelines blur, names change, important details slip or shift. And when you ask a simple question, they either take offense or offer an even more elaborate explanation than before. Stoic philosopher Monimus Rufus once said, "Truth is the foundation of all healthy interaction." He believed that no one who lies is truly free. And that's crucial. A pathological liar lives in a self-made prison, one constructed from the very stories they tell. But it goes deeper. These lies aren't just about impressing you. They're about controlling you, how you see them, what you believe, and how you interpret the reality around you. Watch closely. The truth doesn't hide in the grand speeches. It hides in the small details they hope you'll forget. In the beginning, their stories captivate. It all sounds cinematic, near-death experiences, dramatic escapes, heroic rescues. They're always the main character, either the misunderstood genius or the wounded savior. But over time, the threads unravel. The places they said they lived don't match their earlier claims. The relationships they described seem to vanish. Things they spoke of with absolute certainty now shift in tone, or happen in different years. And when you ask, "Didn't you say you met him in 2018, not 2020? You'll notice a sudden change. A shadow crosses their face. Tension rises. They'll either change the subject, pivot to something more flattering, or invent an even bigger lie to cover the first. That's how the cycle deepens. Lies need more lies to survive. And over time, the web becomes exhausting for them and confusing for you. You start doubting your own memory. You begin to question yourself. Maybe I misheard. Maybe I misunderstood. But that's not your mistake. That confusion? It's intentional. It's part of their design, to twist your reality and weaken your confidence. The Stoics would urge you to respond with logic and awareness. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If someone can prove to me I'm wrong, I will gladly change, because I seek the truth." The psychopath, however, avoids truth at all costs. They don't seek it, they manipulate it. They twist and bend it to maintain their image, their control, their illusion of being untouchable. And the moment you question their story, you become a threat, not because you're wrong, but because you're right. Worse still, they lie with such conviction, such emotional certainty, that even the most rational minds can begin to believe them. They've rehearsed, they've refined, They speak with the passion of someone who believes the lie, because in many ways, they do, not just for you, but for themselves. It justifies their actions. It shields them from guilt. It frees them from having to take responsibility. Epictetus once taught that we must train ourselves to recognize the difference between appearances and reality. And when stories start to feel like scripts, when every heroic tale sounds too perfect to be true, that's your signal to pause, to observe, and to start seeing not just what they say, but why they say it. When someone lies to you repeatedly, it slowly warps your view of the world. You begin to doubt yourself. You ask, am I being too harsh? Maybe I misunderstood. But here's your real power. Clarity, the ability to see what is. Not just what people tell you it is. It means tuning into patterns, paying attention to contradictions, and trusting that quiet voice inside that whispers, something feels off. Because these lies, they're never small, they're crafted to manipulate, to win sympathy, to gain forgiveness, to pull you closer. Each story is carefully constructed to make you trust them, pity them, or stop questioning them. And when the mask slips, don't expect an apology. They won't own up to the deceit. Instead, they deflect, they get defensive, they turn it around. Suddenly, you're the problem. They say things like, how could you even ask that? After everything I've told you, you still don't believe me. The guilt is reversed. They're not ashamed of lying. They make you feel ashamed for noticing it. But the Stoics taught us this. Shame doesn't come from being skeptical. It comes from dishonest actions, Seneca said. A guilty person might escape being caught, but they'll never feel secure. That paranoia, that tension, it leaks out in defensiveness, in anger, in chaotic storytelling that keeps getting more extreme. The compulsive liar is always running from the truth, from being exposed, and from the silence that would force them to face who they really are. So how do you protect yourself? You stay rooted in reality. When someone's story feels too dramatic, too perfect, or strangely inconsistent, write it down, not because you're collecting evidence, but because you need clarity in time. The cracks will show. Don't be fooled by the sparkle of a good story. Don't judge someone's character by what they say. Watch what they do. See how they handle truth. Do they admit when they're wrong, or do they just create another layer of illusion? It's not cruel to question someone's version of events. You're not disloyal for spotting inconsistencies. You're simply doing what's necessary to protect your heart and your mind from manipulation. So next time you hear a story so shocking that it makes your jaw drop, pause, don't react. Don't argue, just watch, because behind every over-polished story is a quieter truth, one they don't want you to find, and in that silence, you'll start to see them clearly. Previously, we explored how manipulators use emotion and storytelling to twist your perception. Now, we dive even deeper into the most dangerous game of all. Psychological control. This is control through confusion, power hidden beneath silence, domination disguised as care. Epictetus once said that the only thing truly within our control is our own mind. But when someone is constantly rewriting your reality day by day, even your thoughts can begin to feel like strangers. If someone constantly leaves you second-guessing yourself, while they remain calm and collected, they're not negotiating. They're dominating, and that's a game you can never win. The only move left is to walk away. The psychopath is a master of illusion. They make you feel like you are the problem in your own story. They smile as they quietly make you doubt everything you thought was true. They hurt you, and then comfort you. They shatter your confidence, and then offer to fix it. It's a psychological trap. A cycle that keeps you stuck. You start apologizing more, you change yourself more, you walk on eggshells, you over-explain everything, you question even the most basic facts. And the worst part, it's not your fault. None of this is random. It was intentional. You're not going crazy. Someone is messing with your sense of reality. Seneca once said, "He who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." That's how manipulation works. You suffer in silence, in confusion, in anticipation, without ever knowing why or how to fix it. Every word becomes a test. Even silence becomes a trap. Psychopaths thrive in ambiguity. If they insulted you outright, you'd walk away. But instead, they say things like, "You're just being emotional," or "You remember it wrong." And that makes you stay. You try harder, to not be too much, to earn their approval. But the harder you try, the more power they have. They slowly make you question your friends, your family, even your memories. They don't force you into isolation. They make you feel like you have no one else. They convince you that nobody else understands you. Eventually, their voice becomes the only one you trust, even as it breaks you down. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." When someone else controls your thoughts, your spirit darkens. You start living in reaction to their moods, their preferences, their fabricated world, and then you start defending them. You explain their behavior to others. You minimize the damage. You repeat their excuses. They're just intense. They had a rough childhood. They didn't mean it, but you're not really protecting them. You're protecting your hope. The hope that maybe things aren't as bad as they seem. That maybe the person you met in the beginning is still in there somewhere. But that version of them was never real. People can change. People grow. But a psychopath doesn't. They never take responsibility. They pass blame like smoke through the air. And if you call them out, they flip the story. Suddenly, you are the problem. You're the dramatic one. You're unstable. Don't believe it. Epictetus said, "People are not disturbed by events, but by the views they take of them." So trust your judgment. If someone always makes you feel anxious, your body is trying to tell you the truth. If someone constantly makes you feel anxious, exhausted, or confused, pay attention. That's not paranoia. That's your intuition trying to wake you up. And here's what Stoic clarity teaches us. Manipulation thrives in darkness. Expose it to light. Write down what they say. Say it out loud. Talk to people you trust. List out everything that doesn't sit right. Because once you recognize the pattern, the exit becomes obvious. You're never meant to win their game. Not because you're weak, but because the game is rigged. It's designed to drain your peace, your strength, and your sense of worth, all so they can feel in control. Don't play it. Seneca said, "Surround yourself with people who make you better." If someone constantly makes you feel small, if they twist your reality, if they drain you, they're not helping. They're caging you. Genuine relationships are built on respect, shared values, and honest communication. Manipulation twists all of those into tools of control. Respect becomes fear. Truth becomes a weapon. Connection becomes a trap. If you're always the one who has to change, apologize, or keep the peace, you're not in a relationship. You're in a performance, and the role you're playing isn't even you. So step back. Look at the board. You don't need to beat them. You just need to leave the game. At first, you'll feel something unfamiliar, silence, emptiness. But that silence will slowly become peace, the kind of calm clarity the Stoics spoke of. Not the strength to endure manipulation, but the strength to refuse it. You don't need anyone's permission to take back your mind. You just need the courage to say, "That's enough." Sign number 5. No remorse after the wreckage. Now watch closely. Do they ever apologize? Do they take responsibility? Or do they deflect, redirect, and blame? Psychopaths don't feel remorse. They feel inconvenience. If they say, sorry, it's just to smooth things over, not to heal the harm. Their goal isn't reconciliation. It's reputation management. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You can commit injustice by doing nothing." And when you confront a psychopath, that's exactly what you'll get. Nothing. No guilt, no shame, no regret, just a cold, steady stare, maybe a dismissive shrug. Real remorse changes behavior. Fake remorse just changes tactics. If someone keeps hurting others without change, without reflection, without empathy, you're not dealing with someone wounded. You're dealing with someone dangerous. They look bored when you speak your truth. Tell them about the pain they caused, and they steer the conversation back to themselves. You're too sensitive. I didn't mean it that way. You're making this a big deal. Those aren't apologies. They're dismissals. And most times, you'll walk away questioning yourself, not them. Sure, they might fake remorse for a moment, a text, a gift, a tear. But what happens after? Does the behavior stop, or does it morph into something harder to detect? Seneca said, "What good is it to bring up old wounds? Why be unhappy now just because you once were?" But the psychopath makes sure you stay unhappy. Not because you were wronged once, but because they haven't finished with you yet. Previously, we talked about how the most dangerous thing isn't just the absence of remorse. It's the ongoing damage that never truly stops. The harm doesn't end. It simply changes shape. Again and again, it's reframed as your fault, followed by either a weak apology or complete silence. But let's be clear, this isn't regret. This is a strategy. And when you bring them the truth, undeniable evidence, they don't panic. They don't feel exposed. They stand tall, composed, not to protect the relationship, but to protect their image. They'll call you too sensitive, overdramatic, unstable, or worse. They'll twist the narrative and tell others that you are the aggressor. You are the manipulator. This is how they turn stories into weapons. They're not trying to make things right. They're trying to erase what happened, not through healing, but through rewriting. The Stoics taught us that virtue lies in action, not words. Epictetus put it bluntly, don't explain your philosophy. Embody it. A true apology doesn't live in pretty phrases. It lives in changed behavior. You don't thank someone for bringing you flowers after they've burned down your house. You want to know what sparked the fire, and you watch closely to make sure it doesn't happen again. A psychopath will destroy your peace and offer you roses made of ash. And here's the worst part. They'll act like nothing ever happened. No closure, no accountability, just silence and a smile. You're left with questions. They move on without a second glance. Why? Because they never cared emotionally. To them, you were just a temporary role in their performance. And once the act ended, they walked off stage. Philosopher Musonius Rufus once said that true wisdom means improving not just yourself, but also the lives of those around you. He wrote, "To harm another is to harm yourself." But psychopaths don't believe that. They harm others and feel nothing. Not because they're strong, but because they're hollow. You might think, if I could just explain it right, if they saw how much pain they caused, maybe they'd feel it, but they won't. You need empathy to feel guilt. You need a conscience to understand someone else's pain. You need a soul that can carry the weight of hurting another human being. But they don't have that. And here's the most terrifying part. They know that you do. They study it. They know exactly how to fake it. They mimic empathy, rehearse sorrow, and copy kindness. but none of it is real. They don't feel. They only observe results. And when the cost of keeping the mask on becomes too high, they simply take it off. Not in an explosive confrontation, but with a cold, calculated indifference. And when keeping the mask on becomes too costly, they simply take it off, quietly, without drama, not with a fiery argument or tears, but with a cold, calculated indifference that stings deeper than any fight ever could. So, what do you do in that moment? You remember what the Stoics taught us about true power. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. You can't force someone to feel guilt. You can't create a conscience in someone who lacks one. But you can protect your peace. You can draw a line. You can decide to stop tolerating repeated harm from someone who clearly doesn't care. Because when someone keeps breaking trust, crossing boundaries, and wounding hearts without ever looking back, that's not clumsiness. That's destruction. And it doesn't stop until you stop letting it happen. Walk away without apologizing. Heal without getting closure. Let go, even if you never fully understand why. You don't have to wait for them to feel remorse. They never will. And the longer you wait, the more of yourself you lose. Start living again, right now. Treat every day as a new beginning. Seneca once advised, begin again. Beyond their control, you don't need them to validate your pain. You don't need their guilt to move forward. All you need is your choice. The Stoics believed that being clear was more valuable than being comfortable. They didn't sugarcoat human behavior. They taught that serenity doesn't come from avoiding sorrow, it comes from facing the truth. So keep this in mind. Charm without depth, empathy without a heart, stories that keep shifting, lies that leave you dazed, harm that never comes with guilt. These aren't quirks, they're signs. You are not their therapist. You are not their fixer. Your duty is to guard your mind, your peace, and your path. And as Seneca wisely said, the wise avoid the wicked, not out of fear, but out of caution. Until next time, stay alert, stay grounded, and always listen to what your gut is telling you.